All right. Hello, everybody. Chris Brophy, Musically Obsessed, and I am joined by some good friends of mine. We've got Aaron Mutha Alamere. We've got
Hello.
Ron Haggerty from the Vinyl Sanctuary with his Kiss t-shirt. And we have Pete from Pete CD Vinyl World with us tonight. It's been a while since we did our last video. The last video, we discussed the first 3 albums. And, when they're off camera, we were like, oh, we should talk about Dynasty and Unmasked because they're sort of like in a world of their own. So that's what we're going to discuss tonight. I think the 4 of us will probably go through. Each of us will talk about Dynasty first, and then we'll roll into Unmasked. So the reason we pick these albums is because a lot of times when you talk about Kiss, these albums bring up interesting feelings with people, especially Unmasked. So, I've heard a lot of people, they either like it or they don't like it. There's not a lot of middle ground with Unmasked. Dynasty, maybe there's a little bit more middle ground there. So we figured we'd talk about these, and we drew straws, and Pete is the winner. So he's going to start.
All right.
We'll start with Dynasty.
Yeah. Okay. So, Dynasty. I became a Kiss fan probably in around '79. I was 5, but at that time, the only songs I knew were Detroit Rock City, Rock and Roll All Night. So I had no knowledge of Dynasty even being out because I had Destroyer and that was it. So I didn't even actually hear Dynasty until the originals albums were released on CD, which I guess was around 86 or so, if I remember correctly. And that's the remaster. So the only songs I heard from Dynasty were the 2 that were on Killers, which was I Was Made for Loving You and Sure Know Something. And it's then that I realized, oh, I knew that song, I Was Made for Loving You, but I didn't know it was Kiss. Right. So for years, those are the only 2 songs I knew. Loved Sure Know Something. So when I got the album, a lot of people say, oh, this is their disco album or whatever. But really, besides I Was Made for Loving You, I think only Dirty Living has a little bit of a disco feel to it.
I'd actually say Sure Know Something has a little bit of a disco feel to it too.
Yeah. But I think from start to finish, though, every song on here is really strong.
Yeah, definitely.
So they, like you mentioned, they used Vinnie Poncia from Peter's solo album on the production, but Peter only played on Dirty Living.
Right.
The rest of the album is Anton Fig, who played on Ace's '78 solo album. At the time, though, I don't know if you guys remembered. I don't think people, felt that it wasn't Peter. I think on Unmasked, people thought maybe it wasn't Peter because there's some double bass drum on there. But as far as Dynasty, since he was still in the band, he did the tour. I don't think there was any question back then if it was Peter or not. But years later, I think it came out that he hadn't played on it. But even though the songs I think are really strong and really good, I don't think they have that classic Kiss sound overall. I think the Paul songs, pretty much sound like his solo album songs. Gene only has 2 songs on here, X-Ray Eyes and Charisma, which are both really good, but there's not a lot of Gene on this album at all. It's 3 Ace songs. Yeah. 2000 Man, Hard Time, Save Your Love. All are pretty strong. I think probably people were, I don't know if they were surprised there was 3 Ace songs on here.
Right. Well, I was going to mention that too, that, there are 3 Ace songs here. And I was trying to think, why would there be 3 Ace songs on this album? And I think that there's a lot of factors. I think, wasn't Aces one of the better selling of the solo albums? Or
yeah, I think at that point they did the solo albums because Ace and Peter wanted to leave. So right. At that point, I think they were demanding, at least Ace was demanding more songs on the album. And maybe Gene just didn't have a lot of songs. I mean, a lot of people talk about Gene in the 80s, like sort of checking out, and his songs were just like
Dating
run of
Cher.
run of the mill, yeah, dating Cher at the time. But really, between his solo album and Unmasked, I mean, his solo album songs were almost like Love Gun Leftovers. Unmasked, he only had, I think, 2 or 3 songs on there as well. So, this whole period for Gene to me is the worst period, or at least, the least in involvement in their albums. But
Yeah.
there is a demo bootleg on YouTube you can listen to where they're rehearsing for this album, and Peter is on it. At the, it's come out. People were saying, well, Peter broke his arm, and so he couldn't really play. But that was really on his solo album. It was the producer's choice not to have him play on the album. So I think sort of that band feel is missing from this.
Now, why did they decide for him not to play? Was it that he just couldn't cut the mustard, or what was?
I don't know. Yeah, at that point, maybe he was still getting back in shape.
Drugged up.
People have said the Dynasty Tour he played horribly, but the bootlegs I've seen, I think, I think they're okay. They're not horrible. But I don't know. I mean, supposedly this is the album where they lost a lot of their original fans because of I Was Made for Loving You. The album was still a big success. It went double platinum. But to me, if you were a fan and you heard the rest of the album, I mean, I still would have remained a fan. But I guess, if you're, say, 13, 14, and 77, now you're 15 or 16 and 79, maybe you already started listening to like Judas Priest and Iron Maiden.
Right.
You're sort of getting like past, and maybe the merchandise and everything started to turn some of the older fans off. And I think that especially happened with Unmasked, but
yeah, I think I think, especially in America, maybe people were kind of in that mindset of like, been there, seen that, done that. We know what the whole Kiss thing is. And I think I read somewhere where like the Kiss shows were almost like had become family affairs.
Right.
Where, like, a lot of kids and things like that. So Kiss had almost lost their, the grittiness.
Yeah. And the tour, actually, they were banking on the tour to have multiple nights in each city. And it was only a couple cities like New York City where they had multiple nights. So overall, they lost a lot of money on the tour.
Right.
In fact, they wasted like $1 million on this laser effect that Paul was supposed to shoot a laser out of his eye. And most of the cities, the fire marshals or whatever, didn't approve of it. So they ended up losing like $1 million just from that. So a lot of, I don't know. I guess, it was just, they were still not, working well together as a band also from coming off the solo albums.
Right. Yeah. I mean, I was late to Dynasty as well. But it's really become one of my favorite Kiss albums.
Yeah.
And I really like how Ace, and we were saying Ace has a lot of songs on here. I love how he does the Rolling Stones 2000 Man. I mean, that's just become a signature Ace song. Sure Knows Something, that bass line in that song is killer. And it's got sort of like a disco dancey groove to it, but nothing. Yeah. I love Peter's Dirty Livin'. I think he sings the hell out of that song. I agree with you. Gene's songs are sort of phoned in, charisma and extra guys. They're okay. I mean, they're not the best songs on the album. I love Paul's Magic Touch. That is an underrated song. Really.
He played that on his solo tour for Live to Win in 2007. Yeah. And I think this album has aged well. Like when I first heard it, I just was like, okay, it's okay. Yeah. But I think over the years, it's one of those albums that aged pretty well and has gotten a lot more appreciation over the years.
Right. All right, Aaron or Ron, you guys want to jump in? Aaron's like ready to rock here. He's got like he has all the Kiss albums behind him. Yeah.
Yeah. All right.
All original pressings.
Well, not all, but most of
Yeah.
it. But yeah, this album here, it was actually one of my first Kiss records I got. After I got into the 80s stuff, this is my first actual one I got on vinyl from the makeup era. So I got it there was a new record store in town. It just opened. It had a bunch of stuff, and I grabbed this one. And I didn't really know any of the songs on it, but I Was Made for Loving You came on. And I knew that instantly, of course. And actually, wasn't that their highest, their biggest hit they had
at the time? I think, yeah.
Yeah.
And so I knew that one, and I actually like that song. I don't, even if it's disco-y, I still like it.
I love it.
Yeah, I do too. I know Gene has problems with it, but but I like it. And yeah, so when I heard this, I was totally blown away. I mean, Magic Touch, like you said, is such a great song. Mm-hmm. And I really like X-Ray Eyes, and I thought Charisma was great too. That instantly grabbed me the first time I heard it. Charisma did. I really loved the on it. And so I'd heard this album, and I had a friend that lived across the street from me as a singer of our band, and we'd always listen to Kiss. And the line in Hard Times, growing funny flowers outside on my windowsill, he had a little windowsill with that he threw in some seeds of something, and they were growing. So we'd always be talking about that as we were driving by. It's kind of funny. But yeah, Hard Times is one of my favorite Ace songs. I love it. Let's see. Yeah, 2000 Man. I actually like that better than the Stones version. I really love how Ace sings that.
Isn't that Satanic Majesties album or whatever the hell that's called?
Yes.
Yeah.
But I heard that Ace song a million times before I heard the Rolling Stones one, though. And he does a really good job on it on the acoustic album, too, the Unplugged. It's really good sounding on that as well. But yeah, this album, and this is the album I always used on Halloween to get the makeup if I was doing Kiss makeup.
Yeah.
Because it had the best picture of it.
Now, did Peter add the green for this album, or was that?
I think that was the first one he had the green. Yes.
Yeah.
And I don't think he ever really used it again.
I think
I always really
cool.
love this. Yeah, this is all beat up, but this poster that came with it is great too. Yeah, it's falling apart. Never mind.
That was supposed to be the cover.
Yeah, and it's a really cool.
It was supposed to be called Out of the Asylum, actually.
Oh.
But they thought it was too, like, I don't know, violent or something at the time. So
that would have been a cool cover, man.
Yeah. Yeah, this thing's
actually the cover was, if you ever saw that picture below, they're wearing straitjackets.
Oh yeah. And
so
I love that too. Look at Gene's eyes there, man. He's like,
yeah. Yeah, you can't see the green as well on Peter Criss there either.
You know, I was gonna say,
and Dirty Livin's a great song too.
Oh yeah. Thank God Ace was in the band at this point, because I think he kind of kept them grounded with the whole rock and roll thing. I think Paul was sort of looking to write the next hit, because I remember reading something about I Was Made for Loving You, and Paul was listening to a lot of disco. He's like, wait a second, I could write a disco song. This is easy.
Yep.
And he did it, and it was a huge freaking hit. But thank God Ace was there, because even when we talk about the next album, and eventually when we talk about The Elder, Ace was always wanting to keep that rock and roll sound.
Yeah. Well, I think this is the point where Paul took over the band, really.
Yeah.
You can really.
Yep.
You know what? There's a man in this video who has not spoken yet, but I think he's well qualified though, because I see Ride the Lightning behind him, Peace Sells, Death Angel, Frolic in the Park, some band called Overkill. Who the hell is Overkill? Testament.
I have no idea.
Nice. The Legacy. All right, Ron, what do you want to say about Kiss?
I was actually really late to this album, to Dynasty. Probably, I think the first time I heard it was maybe 8 years ago or so.
Wow.
So yeah. So I didn't have the record until, I don't know, maybe 3-4 years ago myself. But the song that always popped up is Hard Times. I don't know, maybe just that it's because it's an Ace song and it's the closest to what they were.
It's a heavy song.
Oh yeah. I remember mowing the lawn with my earphones in and listening to this album front to back, and nothing really popping out to me until Hard Times came on. But I think since then, this album has really become one of my favorite of their 70s albums. Once you get past I Was Made for Loving You, I still can't stand that song. once you, my wife's telling me to stop. Once you get past that song, the rest of it's really good. And to be honest, I have not heard the Rolling Stones version of 2000 Man. As much as I love the Rolling Stones, I don't have that album. So I have not heard the original of that song yet. So I have nothing to compare it to really. But Charisma is another one that popped out at me as well. But yeah, Sure Know Something. I like that one too. It's a bit softer, but I really like it. Like a little bit more on melodic side, but yeah, for me, Hard Times is really the song that kind of hooked me on this album. So.
Now, Desmond Child co-wrote "I Was Made for Loving You." Is this his first co-writing thing?
Yeah.
So
With
this is the
Kiss.
first time. This is the first time that he worked with Kiss.
Right. And I think Paul actually produced, he had a solo act and Paul produced, I forgot what they were called. I have their 12-inch single, but they were like a sort of like a dance R&B thing. And so yeah, he wrote it with Desmond. But I'm actually surprised that the record company didn't push Sure Know Something as a single more.
That's a good song. Now wait, what record is that? Is that the one you were just talking about?
Desmond Child and Rogue.
Right.
Yep.
He co-wrote a song called "The Fight" or something like that, Paul. Right?
The Fight.
Yeah.
Yep. And Paul Stanley, yes, co-wrote it. Yep.
No.
Yeah, that's a pretty good song.
Yeah, I've never heard that before. And did you say? I should know this, but did Vinny Poncia, did he produce Peter's solo record?
Yeah.
Okay.
So I think he was insisting on that. He was probably threatened to leave the band or something at that point, or whatever. But it's funny. He turned out that he was the one that didn't want Peter to play on the album.
Yeah,
in the long run.
Yeah, I mean, I think we all sort of agree that this is well, it's aged well. I think it's a good album. I think it's a nice balance of, maybe a sort of a new, I don't know, disco-y sound, but also kind of holding on to their hard rock sound as well. Yeah, I just always have loved that cover too. It's just so iconic.
Yeah, I think it's one of their best covers as well.
Yeah.
More Ace the better. That's why I love this too. It's a lot of Ace.
Oh yeah, a lot of Ace. Yeah, what else would I just want to write down? Yeah, you had mentioned Anton Fig playing drums. I would love to hear, I've never heard any recordings of the Dynasty Tour. I'd love to hear how Peter did on the drums.
Well, there's that famous Pro Shot concert. It was on the Kiss anthology. It was, I think, one of the early dates in the tour.
Yeah.
So they play that's another thing. They only at the time were playing 2 songs. I Was Made for Loving You and 2000 Man from this. And then they played 1 song from each solo album.
Okay.
So they didn't do a lot of promotion for it that way.
I will say this, because I have the Kissology DVDs. I do not like the costumes for the Dynasty Tour.
Yeah.
I think they're, I don't know. I think they're way over top, even for Kiss.
Yeah, they're kind of crazy.
Yeah, I don't know. I'm not into the Dynasty costumes.
I mean, I think Ace's is okay, Gene's is okay, but Paul's and Peter's aren't really that different, except like when they did those photos where they had the big, Peter had the lions on his shoulders, the green lions, and Paul had like this pink long sequin jacket or something.
Yeah, I remember seeing them. I'll have to, I haven't watched those Kissology DVDs in a while. But
that concert's definitely on YouTube because they really, I think that's the only pro shot from the Dynasty Tour. But it's in fact, I probably had that concert on VHS before I actually had the album. So
yeah, I'll have to check that out. And this is random, but I just saw that Paul Stanley came out with a new album with that R&B band that he sang.
Oh yeah, I was gonna ask you guys if you heard that.
Yeah, I listened to a song sample,
It's all auto tune. His voice is completely shot. I mean,
Oh,
he can't
yeah.
even speak anymore.
No, and I'm listening to it. I'm looking up the song title here. I listened to it last night. Oh, his band's called Soul Station.
Yeah.
And he does a version of the song Ooh Child.
Yeah.
Things Are Gonna Get Easier, that song. And I'm listening to it, and I'm like, okay, it's just sort of bland. Like, he added nothing to it. And you're right, it sounded auto-tuned. And I'm like, why? I don't know. I mean, I guess he likes the soul R&B type stuff, but I don't know. It just seems like I was a little excited about the album. Then I listened to the sample. I'm like,
Yeah. It's like, why?
Yeah.
I mean, in concert now, he's not even singing. He's completely lip syncing pretty much.
Yeah. I think his voice.
I mean, it's blatant.
Yeah.
That's too bad.
So does anybody else want to say something about Dynasty?
Well, I love how they pronounce it Dynasty in Australia.
Yeah, Australia.
Yeah.
Dynasty.
And I always hear Paul Stanley saying Dynasty on things. It's kind of cool.
Dynasty.
Now, was this around the same time? Remember when they had that that famous interview with all the bands from all the members of Kiss, and Ace was like extremely drunk?
The Tom Snyder interview? Yeah.
Was
That's
that
great.
around this time, around the
Yeah.
79 time? Yeah. He had the big silver like
that is one of the funniest interviews you ever see. Ace is completely
Ace is hilarious.
He's like, Tom Snyder's like, well, what are you supposed to be, a spaceman? And Ace is like, no, actually I'm a plumber. And then he calls Gene the bass player instead of bass player.
Yeah.
And then Ace, he's like, I play the trout.
Yeah, I'll have to watch that again.
Gene and Paul are just sitting there like looking at him like, this guy is just like ruining our reputation here.
Yeah, I guess I don't know. I guess Gene and Paul will want to be taken, I don't know, more seriously, and even though they wore the outrageous costumes, but that was what was great about Ace is he was a rock star, but he was a normal guy too. I don't know. I mean, success actually, I mean, it definitely got to him, but I think he sort of just remained that sort of goofy guy even through all of that.
Yeah.
I mean, even now when you watch interviews with him, he's just sort of like laid back and whatever. And now, meanwhile, he was the guitarist for one of the best rock and roll bands ever.
Yeah.
Yeah.
He's my favorite guitarist, actually. So I know he's not technically the best, but he's always been my favorite. I just love his the feel of it. You can tell it's him when he's playing.
Oh, definitely. Yeah, he's got that sound.
Yeah, I mean, when you think about it, he did a little bit of tapping on the Alive 2 solo, and that's a year before Van Halen 1.
Yeah.
And he doesn't get any credit.
They were kind of in the studio doing stuff together with Gene. So
yeah, that's right. Eddie and Alex played on the demo for Christine 16, right?
Yep. Yeah. And they wanted Ace to play guitar when he got all mad and didn't want to do it. Yeah.
I think also Fraley's Comet could have been much, much bigger had they, had he kept that band together that he had for those two Fraley's Comet albums. They could have been much, much bigger.
I think Second Sighting, if that was some other band, and that album was released, it would have been huge. But it's the fact that it was Ace Frehley, people were just like, he's old. But that song, It's Over Now, that should have been a huge hit.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. I love that album.
Me too, even though it's like all Todd Howarth, but I think it's really good, actually.
No.
I'll have to pull that album out again. I haven't listened to it in a while.
So I have a question. Is this Unmasked or is this Dynasty? This look.
Both.
Wow.
Both.
That's what I thought. This is the Dynasty Tour probably, right?
Yeah, that back looks like the Dynasty Tour because that's what I didn't like about Gene's outfit. It looks like it's like he's got aluminum foil.
Yeah.
Well, Gene had a couple different, if you actually look at photos from that era, he had a few different costumes, but he had one that was actually, if you look closely, little marbles that were painted silver. Oh. And then he had the one that he wore on tour, which is more of like it looks like stone or what you're saying, like the tin foil.
Yeah.
But he had a couple different ones he tried out, I think, before they narrowed it down.
What's on that boot, Aaron?
It doesn't have anything from those records. It's Detroit Rock City, Let Me Go Rock and Roll, Firehouse, Making Love, Cold Gin, Nothing to Lose, God of Thunder, Rock and Roll Night, Black Diamond, but has a killer guitar solo from Ace on it.
Nice.
That's probably Rock and Roll Over, right? Tour?
It's what?
Rock and Roll Over tour, it sounds like.
No, this
Just
is from this tour, but it's just these songs. It's
Oh,
not a full
So they handpicked them out of the
show, yeah. It's Live in Japan 80. And you can tell because
they didn't play in Japan in 1980.
What, they didn't?
No, they played 76 for Rock and Roll Over, and then they did a quick run of shows in beginning of 78 before on the, I guess it was considered a live too.
So they
But
probably
they only
just threw
played
the-
in Europe and Australia in 1980.
Mm-hmm.
So, but
That's
just from
why-
the songs, I think that's from Rock and Roll Over tour.
That sounds like it, yeah.
So they just put the wrong cover on it, I guess. Then.
Yeah, and the wrong title, everything.
And
But it's
Aaron
really-
paid
The Ace
$150.
solo's great.
Typical bootleg.
Yeah, that's cool.
I knew Pete would know.
Yeah, well, that's what I have to do my homework here because I need to make sure. Well, that's why I asked Pete a couple questions before we started here. So, but yeah, it's good that we can all kind of bounce some ideas off of each other. All right. So, any last thoughts on Dynasty? No. All right. So, all right. So now things are going to get interesting because Unmasked. Like, okay, so they still, yeah, there you go. There you go. They still had a lot of fans with Dynasty. All right, Dynasty, I'll say Dynasty. And I got to get Unmasked on vinyl. But Unmasked is where they lost a lot of people, especially with the cover, because just the thought of Kiss taking their masks off and their makeup off was like sort of sacrilege. So, and then when you drop the needle on the album, again produced by Vinnie Poncia, but this is even more polished and it's got a sheen to it, and it's lost a lot of that rock sound of the early Kiss stuff. I happen to really, really, really like this album. And I love Shandy. I really don't care. I love that song. And What Makes the World Go Round Tomorrow. What's great about this album is it's a fun album. It's got a fun sound to it. It's lighthearted. It's just a fun album, and I think it's produced really well. Say what you want about the production. It's a clean production. It's crisp. It's definitely polished, but I love it. I love the sound of it. And then Ace's songs, Torpedo Girl, Two Sides of the Coin is one of my favorite Ace songs.
Mm-hmm.
But this was an album I was late to too. I didn't even realize I had never heard these songs before, and then even when I first heard it, I'm like, I don't know if I like it, but it's really grown on me a lot. I don't know how it's aged, but you guys can talk about what you think too.
Should I go first?
Yeah, Pete, why don't you go first?
All right, so I actually got this at the pretty much the same time I got Dynasty, when these came out on CD for the first time.
Yeah.
This is around 86 or so. Then they remastered it in the 90s. But so I completely have the opposite view. I think that both these albums have the same exact people. Paul, Gene, Ace, Anton Fig, same producer. They even recorded at the same recording studio, record plant in New York, I think. But to me, Dynasty has a much more polished, brighter sound. Unmasked almost sounds dull to me.
Oh, you think Dynasty is more polished? All right.
Well, it just sounds like I don't know, more brighter and more vibrant. To me, Unmasked has just a bland tone all around for the whole album.
Yeah.
So, when I first heard it, I didn't know any of the songs either. I had just heard of it. I never got the whole title, Unmasked, what they were trying to. In fact, recently I saw the original artwork for this, and they had a question mark after Unmasked, which to me makes more sense if they had done that. But Is That You is a cover. No, like they've never mentioned where, why they chose to cover this song. The original's on YouTube.
Yeah, I looked it up.
No rhyme or reason,
Yeah, it's a strange cover to do.
Yeah. To me, this album is even the Paul, Gene, and Ace are even more separate as far as like, I don't think any of them besides like background vocals played on each other's songs. Paul plays all the lead guitar on Is That You, Shandy. Naked City, you could tell Gene plays the rhythm guitar. He has like a distinct sound when he plays rhythm guitar on stuff. And to me, What Makes the World Go Round and Easy as It Seems are way more disco than I Was Made for Loving You.
I think so too.
Yeah, I mean, to me, it's like, I don't understand what they were thinking putting out an album like this. They were losing their fans. They had Judas Priest open for them on the part of the Dynasty Tour. They saw where the sort of the future of hard rock was going. Iron Maiden opened it up for them on this album. I don't understand what they were thinking. To me, this sounds like, you remember Leif Garrett or like David Cass. It's almost like if one of them had done a rock album, this is what it sounded like to me. But I do think it's aged well over the years. When I first heard it, I was like, this is the worst Kiss album, period.
Yeah.
Now I still think it's better than like Animalize and Monster, but I like a lot of the songs on it.
I think a lot of people don't like this album. I mean,
I like it now. I didn't, when I first heard it, I was like,
I mean, you're right. It sounds totally different than anything they did. I think Paul was sort of on this. He just wanted to write a hit song. And I think sort of channeling whatever the sound was at the time for pop music.
I'll add, though, that Tomorrow is one of my favorite deep tracks from Kiss ever.
Yeah.
I'm surprised that song actually wasn't a hit for somebody. I think it's got like one of the best hooks, they've had in this whole era, we're talking about now.
Yeah.
But to me, it's just weird too. They didn't do any US promotion for this at all. It's almost like they wanted to sort of lay low. They knew they weren't going to tour the US and then maybe a year or two later come back with this big return of Kiss. Because I don't know if you ever saw when they introduced Eric Carr on Kids Are People Too.
Yeah.
That's only a month after this album came out, and they don't even mention the album at all. They didn't promote anything in the US for this. So it's always, to me, this is the most mysterious album in their catalog, like not The Elder. This album, it's like, what were they thinking? Like, well, I just,
Right. And you're right. It's like, there's a lot of weird stuff, like why choose Is That You to cover, because it's like I had never heard of the guy who wrote it. I looked it up as well. And you're right. It's just a strange album, but I love it though. And, but I can hear what you're saying. There's a lot of just un-Kiss type stuff on here. So.
Yeah. And I think, the final thing I think is, like I said, with Dynasty, if you're, 13, 14 in 1977, now you're 16 and 17, you're already listening to probably Iron Maiden, Judas Priest, Motorhead, Van Halen. You're not going to gain a new fan base with this album. The kids that liked them on Dynasty were probably already done with them. So it was I think an alienating album. It didn't appeal to anybody in the US. I know overseas it was huge in Australia, and parts of Europe. But as far as the US, this was definitely wrong album, wrong time.
Yeah, Ron or I almost said Jody. Still says Jody there. Aaron or Ron, you guys want to say something?
Go ahead, Ron.
All right, I guess I'll go on this one. Goodbye. I don't know. For me, it's definitely my least favorite of all the Kiss albums. I'll even take Carnival of Souls, their grunge album, over this. To be honest, I have the German pressing. I think that's more common, isn't it, than the actual American pressing? My favorite songs were Naked City and Torpedo Girl. Torpedo Girl actually kind of reminded me of maybe a lighter Aerosmith song. Outside of that, nothing really grabbed me on this album, to be honest with you. It's definitely my least played Kiss album. And yeah, definitely my least. If I was going to rank their entire discography, this would be at the bottom. So I'm like
even lower than Animalize?
Even lower than Animalize is in my top 5.
Oh.
Don't unsubscribe from me, please.
Yeah, this is in my top 5. This is in my top 5. I like them a lot, but I also like Frank Sinatra Watertown, and nobody really likes that.
Yeah. I mean, I'm kind of, I came into Kiss in the hair when they were in their sort of glam metal era, around the Crazy Nights era. So, that's kind of the era I was used to. And then I kind of had to dig back to their 70s material, which was much, much later down the road. Like you're talking 99, 2000. For the longest time, I couldn't stand most Kiss. So Creatures of the Night is, far and away my favorite album, and that's their heaviest album. This is definitely their least heavy. So I kind of compare it to that all the time, So compared to that, it doesn't really hold up. But I would take Torpedo Girl, any day of the week. I'd put that on any Kiss mix, greatest hits mix. I'd put that song on any mix,
I like Talk to Me. That's probably my favorite Ace song on the album.
Mm-hmm.
I actually think they should have probably released that first. I think that's the most Kiss-like song on there almost.
I always like Two Sides of the Coin, but
I like all 4 of them.
I feel like whatever we say, Aaron's like, I like that. I like that.
I do though.
I don't think that I've never heard Aaron say anything negative about Kiss. Is there anything you don't like about Kiss, Aaron?
I didn't really like Sonic Boom much.
Yeah, okay. There you go.
But I love Carnival of Souls. Monster was all right. I don't really like the newer era, the Tommy Thayer, even though I love Tommy Thayer in Black and Blue. I didn't think he mixed well with Kiss, but everything else I love. I mean, Psycho Circus I love.
Psycho Circus is amazing.
He's on Psycho Circus, Tommy Thayer.
Yeah, he is.
So,
but
that's like his best playing, I think.
The heaviest record, heavier than Creatures of the Night even. That's why I don't get Ron not liking it. That's a heavy album.
Yeah, I like that album. It's not like a typical Kiss album, but there's a lot of good stuff on there, I think.
Yeah, it's pretty heavy. But speaking of Talk to Me, here's some Talk to Me.
Oh, that's cool.
Japanese single with Talk to Me and Easy as It Seems. Kind of cool.
Sweet.
I also have what's this one? This is Shandy and She's So European. Japanese single, and all from Unmasked. And then Tomorrow and Naked City.
That's a pretty terrible song, right? She's So European. Can we agree on that?
I like it.
It's a little cheesy, but
I mean, considering Gene only had like what 2 or 3 songs on here, and that's the best he had.
Again, I think he was dating Cher at this time. We'll blame it on Cher.
Yeah, You're All I Want, and that I Want. She's So European and Naked City would be the 3, right?
Yeah. Yep. And you can tell that on Naked City and You're All I Want, he plays the guitar on there. You could tell.
Mm-hmm.
He's got that.
I'm guitarist like you, so I can't tell that as easy.
He's got that. Whenever Gene plays, he's got that like real open Marshall Les Paul sound. Like the intro to War Machine is him. The beginning of Burn Bitch Burn is him. He's got a distinctive tone when he plays guitar that you can hear.
War Machine, there's a great one.
That's a great song.
Yeah, but the 4 Ace songs on here, Talk to Me, Torpedo Girl, Two Sides of the Coin. There's only 3.
Yeah, it's 3.
Yeah, 3. So he put 6 songs on these 2 albums, and that's why I like them so much. I think is I'm really drawn to the Ace song, and just I love his singing, even though he's not like the best singer technically, or the best.
Yeah.
I really love his style and his just how he sings. It's like the opposite of Geddy Lee for me, where I think he's a good singer, but I don't like how he sings.
Yeah.
But same type of deal.
It's kind of disappointing though that Ace really only plays solos on those 3 songs, right?
Yeah,
because I think Paul handles a lot of the other ones, and some of them I can't even tell. Like,
might be Bob Kulick.
Bob Kulick said though he didn't play on Naked City, but it doesn't sound like Ace and it doesn't sound like Paul. So they've never said if there's another guy that played on some of these songs.
Maybe it was Peter Frampton.
Yeah.
Who knows? They had, they could have been anyone in the studio for them back then.
Yeah.
Yeah, I mean, I agree with you, Pete. I think this is a, and I never thought about it that way, but this is a mysterious album.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, because we know where they were going with The Elder. I mean, that was an obvious thing, bringing Bob Ezrin in and doing that whole, concept thing. But this is a very strange album when you think about it. There's a lot of different sort of things on here.
Especially they just signed a huge record deal after Dynasty. And they come out with this. But I know that Casablanca was not doing well. So they had to sell, like Polygram owned, I think, like half of Casablanca, but then they had to sell the other half to Polygram. So I know the record company was like in disarray, sort of. And,
I mean, the only thing I can think of is that they had such a huge success with I Was Made for Loving You that, Paul Stanley was like, let's write a couple more songs that are in the same vein. You know what I mean? I think he was really just trying to tap into that pop sound. The late 70s stuff came out in 80, right?
Yeah.
So, I mean, I think he was just sort of trying to tap into that sound, and it just wasn't the sound of Kiss, though. That's the thing.
But that kind of is what makes it age good too, though, because it's a little different. When you hear all the Kiss stuff, then this sounds a little different, and it makes you, that's kind of interesting. I like that.
It's funny you say that because, my son just started getting into Kiss a couple years ago, and he liked Dynasty and Unmasked right away. So if you don't know the history of, because most Kiss fans like have reasons why, even if you listen to this album, you'll be like, oh, that's not a bad album. But in the Kiss context, it's like horrible, but but like for example, my son listened to both of these albums and he liked them a lot, so he doesn't have that the history and the sort of timeline is everything.
I think you take Kiss's name off of here, this could have been a pretty big 1980s pop hard rock album. I mean, the song, like you guys said, the songwriting is really good, especially in Tomorrow. And unfortunately, and fortunately, it had the name Kiss on it. So people sort of had their expectations.
Yeah.
And actually, it's a cover song. Is That You is one of my favorite Kiss starters for an album. I love it.
Yeah, I was just trying to look up information about that guy again. I had looked it up at one point, and it was just a strange person.
From what I remember, the guy wrote another song for, I believe, Judas Priest, maybe.
Oh, yeah.
If I'm mistaken, but I think he did write another song that was well known for someone.
And I didn't know that. You just blew my mind when you said Iron Maiden opened for Kiss on the Unmasked tour.
On the European, they only played in Europe and in Australia on Unmasked. In Europe, Iron Maiden opened.
Talk about. Yeah, I think that's almost sort of like when Metallica opened for Ozzy when Metallica was first.
Yeah, and Ozzy was on his hair metal album on that tour too.
Well, here comes Metallica, and I don't know what tour, Master of Puppets maybe, or Ride the Lightning.
Yeah.
It was Master of
They
Puppets.
would have just come out and James had that time. They were just on fire watching those old shows. And then Ozzy comes out. What was it? Ultimate Sin, maybe?
Ultimate Sin, yeah.
I love that album, by the way. But I mean, totally different sound. Oh my God.
Well, that's what I meant by Kiss. They were almost oblivious to what was going on. They were so in their own bubble. How could they not realize you had the new wave of British heavy metal sort of taking over? And what time went so fast then. I mean, Unmasked comes out in 1980, and then a year later, they wrote The Oath, which is like their first true metal song.
Right.
To me. So it's like in a 1 year span, they went from Shandy to The Oath.
Yeah.
You know?
And Shandy, I mean, I love the song, but it is a cheesy freaking song. It's a good song though.
I like it. They do it acoustic. You know, they did it on the Unplugged tour and things like that.
So when
Symphony.
Maiden opened for Kiss, was Maiden touring their first album or Killers?
Their first album, yeah.
First album, okay.
Paul Di'Anno.
Yeah. Wow. I mean, holy crap. They would have come out with, you know, Iron Maiden was on that album, and and
Prowler and
Charlotte. Was Charlotte the Harlot on that one? I want to say.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And they were playing Wrathchild then.
And Wrathchild is freaking heavy.
Yeah, they played that song from early on.
So Steve Harris would have been back there just pounding on his bass, and then Kiss comes out in the costumes doing Shandy.
But fair enough. In fairness, though, I think Unmasked tour, the tour is one of my favorite Kiss tours.
Okay.
You know,
and
they
that's
were
where
really, really heavy on that tour with Eric Carr. If you've ever seen that Australian concert,
is that with the Tank?
no, that's Creatures.
That's Creatures. Okay.
But there's a famous Australia concert with Eric Carr, and they totally kick ass. I mean, and they bring back a couple songs like I think they play Strutter and Coal Gin because they had never been to Australia before.
Okay.
But the show itself for Unmasked was awesome.
Yeah.
They were super heavy.
I have to pull those DVDs out again. Is that on the Kissology?
It's on one of them, probably
Yeah.
the second one, maybe.
All right. Yeah, that's crazy. I just never knew that Iron Maiden opened for them on their European tours. So, I don't know. Did anybody else have anything they want to say about Unmasked?
Yeah, I mean, if I ever had a chance to interview Paul Stanley or Gene, probably most of my questions would be about Unmasked, because they've been asked everything else.
Yeah.
You know, it's like, what were you guys thinking? Like, seriously, putting this out.
Well, and I think it gets sort of lost between Dynasty and The Elder, and I think people forget, like, oh, there's this other strange album that's there too, and I think people forget about it.
Yeah. I mean, it was the only Kiss album I ever bought at the time that I didn't know any of the songs on. I was like, this is weird. And I didn't even get it because it was like, why didn't they leave the title Unmasked for like when they actually took off their makeup?
Right.
I just didn't get the whole concept, you know.
Yeah.
Yeah, I think it was bewildering to a lot of people. It's just but again, I mean, all that aside, I still really, really dig the album. I really like the album a lot.
Yeah, I definitely like it a lot more now than I did back in the 80s. I just,
Yeah.
I'm a fan.
What were you gonna say, Aaron?
I'm a fan of it. I like it.
Yeah. Any other bootlegs you want to show, Aaron?
No, I'm out of that era stuff. So.
Yeah. Oh my gosh, that's funny. All right. Is there any other little tidbits we want to add about either Dynasty or Unmasked or this era of Kiss?
well, just like if you listen to the Ace songs, I mean, it's pretty much Ace and Anton, just like his solo album, but that had Eddie Kramer producing. And to compare that to these tracks, I think, imagine Eddie Kramer had produced Unmasked. I think it would have really brought the album to life,
Yeah, and then
That would have been cool. Edge.
did why did they go with Vinny Poncia again after Dynasty? I guess they just liked the vibe.
I guess they figured Dynasty was a hit. Dynasty was a big album.
Yeah.
It's just that it's the album that their fans sort of abandoned them on. Kind of.
And I guess then my question is then why? Well, because I would assume that.
Kiss did a lot of 2 albums in a row with one producer.
Right. My thing though is I think wouldn't Paul and Gene sort of have kind of a bitter taste in their mouth about Peter Criss's solo record and who he chose as a producer? Why would they have chosen Vinny as the producer for Dynasty after?
I think they just gave in to him at that point.
Oh, because Peter basically said, you either have Vinny or I'm out.
I've read that before. I don't know. It was important for them though when they signed their new contract.
Yeah.
Part of the deal was that they kept 3 original members. That's why Ace is on the cover of Creatures, to make it seem like he was still in the band.
Yeah, okay.
But there's a lot that goes along with that. If you read, there's a book called Kiss and Sell.
Yeah.
It's from one of their business managers wrote it. And when Peter left the band, he actually was still a partner. So he made money on all the albums through Animal.
Oh, really? Okay.
So I think that's why Paul has always resented Peter. They've always been okay with Ace, kind of, even when Ace left the band. But Peter, they've always had like a grudge against, I think.
Yeah. That's crazy. Yeah, and then I always thought it was cool. I mean, Peter came from sort of that. His drumming style was more of like an R&B type style. That he brought to Kiss as well. I think it was kind of an interesting, sort of angle that he brought to the songs. I don't know, but when you watch those early Kiss shows, nobody could touch Kiss.
No,
they were just a commanding band. I mean, say what you want about their technical skills, but they put on a killer show, and they were heavy and they were on point.
Yeah. They did ask Anton to join the band for one day.
Oh, really?
And then they decided that they thought him and Ace would team up too much.
Yeah.
So they decided against it. But he was a member for one day. I guess then they started auditioning drummers and finally found Eric Carr or whatever.
Yeah. All right. Well, this was fun. I don't know if anybody else has anything else they want to add. Mr. Haggerty, anything?
No, nothing I can think. I mean, I think, correct me if I'm wrong, but this is probably the album that sort of divided fans. You had people kind of like Metallica's Black Album, where you had the new fans who were kind of into the lighter stuff and this different side of the band, and then you had the diehard fans that had been around forever and were sort of writing them off. So this is, Unmasked is probably the album that kind of was Kiss's Black Album, where the fans were sort of divided.
I think that was more Dynasty. I think Unmasked was just not even.
It was more load.
It was not a well-selling album. By then, it was just like they were an afterthought Kiss.
Right.
I think Dynasty is the one that's like the Black Album, where because that was a big hit.
Yeah.
And that would be a good discussion. And Justice for All to the Black Album to Load and Reload.
Yeah. That'd be good.
And that's the title right there. What the hell happened? I mean, and I'll just say, I know we're not talking about Metallica, but Load and Reload, they've aged pretty well. They're good albums, but there's too much filler on them, I really think. And
I'm a big fan of Load. I think Reloaded, they could have made a really great album if they combined. But I do like those albums. I think they're, not to get into that, but I think they were the perfect albums for them to release at the time.
Yeah. That'll be another video. Save your thoughts. I'm already thinking of things I want to say about that. That could be an interesting video. But all right. Well, thank you to everybody who watched tonight. And this was fun. So I don't know. Maybe we'll come back with another Kiss one at some point, or I think we just sort of started talking about Metallica, so maybe it'll be Metallica next. We'll see.
Yeah, we could talk about a number of bands, I think, between us.
Yeah, definitely.
Yeah.
We need a name for the four of us. That's what we need.
Four sides of the coin? No. Just kidding. There's already three sides of the coin, right?
Four sides of the coin, the Kiss story. All right. All right. Well, thank you all for watching, and appreciate it, and hopefully everybody enjoyed it. Bye, everyone. Adios.
Thank you.